So there have been various critiques of commercial agriculture made, and a lot of those critiques result from the nature of commercial agriculture. And if you're looking at commercial agriculture today, it's advanced in large scale. If you're looking at it, it's often doesn't seem natural. For example, you're seeing now a picture of a hog finishing building. That facility would likely hold, that one building would likely hold 1,000 pigs, which would be placed there at some finishing stage and then raised until they were finally reached market weight. Here's a combine by Deere. It's self-guided, goes through the field. It records yields by GPS as it's moving through the field. As many computer and computer parts controlling its functions. You have here another example of a grain facility. This would be a facility that holds grain. Farmers and others would bring grain here. It would be held here and then processed someplace else. Finally, over on the right-hand side, you see Decatur, and this is ADM, and this happens to be the soybean processing plant and other items that exist at Decatur. Again, soybean processing capital of the world, and then that leads to McDonald's, which is corporate, provides food, and is a chain. If anything, and you can see here, all of these things are large scale. The commercial agriculture is large scale. It produces most of the food, and it uses technology, and it's very technological advanced. And farmers and everybody will generally adopt any technology that they see as capital. You can make the argument that's because they're on the treadmill, Cochrane's treadmill. Very productive, and there's obviously corporate linkages. That then leads to the critiques of agriculture, and I can think of several and putting them in categories here. One is an environmental critique, that agriculture hasn't been friendly to the environment, that there has been soil erosion and nutrient runoff that has occurred as a result of commercial agriculture. By the way, that happens with all forms of agriculture, and you can make arguments that commercial agriculture is at least as environmentally friendly as many forms that have existed in the past. You have the natural critique. It isn't natural. If you look at how hogs are raised and how corn is grown, it isn't like it was naturally. And that should be obvious. If you're planting corn in a field, it's not natural. That would extend to GMOs, use of GMOs. We're using putting a foreign gene in GMOs, in the genes of a corn and soybean plant. It isn't natural. By the way, that could be the critique that gets vertical farming. It isn't natural. The bad food critique, and here the bad food critique is that we have been providing Americans and others with food that isn't good, that has caused obesity, etc. I would note on that critique, by the way, though, that people in the U.S. are obese. I'm overweight, and it's not from the lack of good food. You would also have the animal agriculture critique. It's unfair to animals. It's inhumane, which, by the way, root word is human, and not animal, but inhumane. And again, this largely gets to your views on how animals should be treated and whether or not they should be used in production of food at all. There's also the corporate critique. Corporate agriculture is very much involved in agricultural production, and that would be viewed as bad by some individuals. We also have the equity critique. Larger farms are gaining, for example. Larger winning firms are gaining, and there are always those that are left behind in that arrangement. Finally, there's also a spiritual critique. This isn't natural, and this doesn't meet spiritual criteria. You will see all of those criteria focused on agriculture and some of them are fair, some of them may not be. Some of them are actually raised by the participants in agriculture as those outside. But those critiques also are leading to innovations. Sustainable agriculture, organic agriculture, plant-based agriculture may be part of that as well. And whether or not they exist in the future or are successful will largely matter about whether those critiques are believed and the public takes hold of them. I would note, as we're moving through here, that most people say that production is going to level off. And actually, if we're looking at Europe is in decline, U.S. would not be increasing without immigration. And I would note that China was at one time following a one-child property. I would also note that if we ever reach the point where populations aren't growing, it's going to be difficult for social programs, i.e. Social Security, Medicare, etc., to support itself with the declining population. It also holds implication for food production because, again, we are expecting the growth in the world to level off, particularly by the year 2050. And largely that's occurring because as economies become wealthier, they tend to have less children. You can argue about the reasons why that happens, but it is one of the things that we observe. Finally, I would note anything that slows technology adoption, if those critiques come into play and we slow technological adoption, we would actually increase Malthusian concerns. Because as we see yields grow, the possibility of meeting food demands in the future are increased. So as the future plays out, you will see commercial agriculture changing and bending to the critiques that are placed on it. You will also see alternatives, and we will see in the future whether those alternatives take hold. It will be an interesting time, and I wish you well in that time.